What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today we're going to talk to you about NIO. I want to go over some of the data points, break down what's moving it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So NIO is down 7.65%, 468 the low, 501 the high. So pretty much right out the gate, it did bounce off of a very key resistance level that it needed to close above today. But I think there's just a lot of geopolitical issues starting to cause some uncertainty in the market, trade wars, and of course, if it is including China and the States, then potentially it could affect the global, have a global recession. So it's not necessarily the best. So as of right now, no news from NIO itself today, no SEC filings, and nothing really coming out from China. So the last couple pieces of news lately have been really helping NIO go higher, such as even vehicle sales on March 11th. But I think a lot of that hype is starting to diminish. Big money's not really getting in because only two transactions on the secondary market above $100,000, both are sells. So you can tell that based on the bid, the ask, and the selling price. Two premiums, so 174,000 and 151. So big money just pretty much right out the gate just stopped really doing anything with NIO. So it is rather unfortunate. You also do have shorts playing some sort of weird game today. So even though NIO is down 7+%, you have shorts returning some shares, 7.99 million, roughly around 4% of their overall position. So 15.39% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 205.5 million shares overall are being shorted. So not only did shorts recently kind of double down at the beginning or end of February, so went from 11% short interest to roughly around 14, but with yesterday's recent bump up, they did again double the hell down, went from 14% short interest to there. You can kind of see it a little bit better on that chart right there. So essentially, shorts are just playing a game, big money. The momentum, like I said, and optimism in the broad market just outright just stopped right out like straight away. So NIO, unfortunately, is kind of just breaking down. Technicals are one thing as well really affecting NIO today. I'll go over that in a second, but 4.87 million in calls, 1.49 million in puts, 48% of all the options being done today are optimistic in nature, and most of it is coming from actual big institutions. So this one right here, there was 758,000 just between 11 and 11:05, and if we kind of look at it, a lot of the big kind of options transactions were bullish, and it looks as though calls are being purchased roughly around that $6 range. At the same time, it was a multi-leg transaction, so you do have some bearish sides and legs to that, and a lot of that is $7 sells for calls. So in reality, I think they are anticipating a lot of volatility, but still a lot more upside. So let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. Of the call options that are being purchased, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that 550. So despite the pullback, people are still kind of sticking to be rather optimistic. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub 450 and potentially sub $4 next week. So kind of crazy, a lot of volatility. These are all the transactions occurring on the dark pool, so above $100,000. So you are seeing once again another very popular day. This is often enough linked to shorting and other large entities, and I feel like this is also at the same time where shorts are hiding a lot of their transactions. So when it comes to NIO, like I said, no news, nothing like that, and in fact there's been no real like speculative things. So most likely you should see them go kind of radio silent from now up until their earnings, which is on the 21st, because they've already talked on kind of extensively about their cost cutting measures. So they're limiting the amount of expansion that they're doing, potentially layoffs. And so, of course, I think they've already laid that down. So now we just have to wait for their upcoming earnings. With it right now at $4.70, it is trading between this R1 and the pivot. So it did bounce immediately off of this R1. So 502 was going to be that key one that you really needed to stay above in order to see some kind of nice gains. Flip side, $4.60 is going to be that next strong support. So far, that hasn't been touched at all today, but like you can even see from my watch list, there's a UPS, which is up like 0.57, and then obviously Intel. But aside from that, everything else is red. So there's just a lot of blood in the market. So I think right now there's not really much optimism for it to hit that R1. Again, going back over here, there's not really a lot of data points coming from China to really push it higher. No planned kind of talks on any stimulus updates. So I think right now it is just at the mercy of the broader market. No new analyst ratings either. So last one did come out 20 days ago. One thing that actually, on a side note, that is coming out tomorrow that might help NIO is Lee's earnings. Dependent on how they turn out, that could really help NIO move higher, or flip side, it could really damage and cause a lot more pullback. It's all going to come down to the data, because typically whenever one company does unveil their earnings, usually the market kind of feels like the same type of positives and negatives are going to be reciprocal across the other companies. So that's why I feel like NIO could get affected a little bit by it. But aside from all of that, though, on the actual chart itself, $4.71, that is that 200-day moving average. And then aside from that, you have that ALMA sitting at 483. So today's pullback did bring it below that, still above the 50 and also 100-day moving averages, but it looks as though it wants to kind of stay below that 200-day moving average. So watch for that. It definitely, ideally in the best case scenario, will close above 471, but we'll have to wait and see. And then on stochastic RSI, you see it get very over, it's not really fully overbought, but given where it was, it's getting a little bit hot. So I think today's pullback is somewhat just, but as long as this does stay above the 100-day moving average, so that's sitting at $4.59. So yeah, I think just a lot of volatility is in the future for NIO, but I think as long as their earnings is a hit, then you should see a nice continued uptrend. But of course, anything does happen, or anything could happen. And even just generally, if you've been in NIO for a while, you know it goes through these little spikes up, and then geopolitical issues usually bring it down. So I think given the nature of what's happening in the broader market, there's a lot more volatility coming in the foreseeable future. Even more reason why you need to research options, because options and volatility, they are best friends. They go hand in hand. So let me know your thoughts on NIO. Are you buying the dip? Are you selling? What's your general 2 cents on kind of what's happened over the last 48 hours? So with all that, appreciate all of you watching. One final thing, pop over to my Discord. It is completely free. A lot of good people talking about stocks, options, and everything else that you need to know. But with that, I appreciate all of you watching.